Pro-Life Special. How the Supreme Court could upend Roe versus Wade. Team coverage. Our analysts explain why pro-lifers have a renewed reason to be hopeful. Personal journey. One mother shares her story, how she became a pro-life supporter and the difference it made in her own life. And time for prayer, how pro-lifers gather every year to make a difference. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, December 29th, 2021. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, we bring you an EWTN News Nightly Pro-Life Special. We are tracking several developments in the pro-life movement. And in the next 30 minutes, you will see the issues that could shape the future of pro-life protection. We begin our coverage with a key case before the Supreme Court. The oral arguments in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health presented a variety of issues for the justices to debate. Their questions range from asking when life begins to why viability would be the most appropriate legal standard. The case is drawing strong reaction from both sides. A decision upholding Mississippi's 15-week abortion ban would implicitly reverse nearly 50 years of precedent and open the door to state restrictions much earlier in pregnancy. During oral arguments, hundreds of pro-lifers showed up outside the Supreme Court to support the unborn.
To demonstrate that not all African Americans are pro-abortion, to demonstrate the inequity of the abortion industry in the African American and Hispanic communities, and to demonstrate that those of us who were fooled by abortion in years past can have our hearts changed, be saved, and stand for life going forward.
The justices are not expected to announce their decision until June or July. That is right in the middle of the 2022 midterm election season. All right, Anderson, president of the Ethics and Public Policy Center, told me that he is optimistic about the Supreme Court's arguments and recently shared his reaction.
Well, I think the first thing to say is that they went about as well as we could have hoped for. There was not a single question from any of the conservative justices that caused me to have concern that they might be on the wrong side of this issue. There was nothing that the pro-choice lawyers said that I think caused anyone to reconsider this case. The lawyer representing the pro-life side did a great job. So I think one takeaway is that we had a good day in court today. And I think that's a good thing for anyone who cares about justice for the unborn.
Absolutely. And I know you've been following this very closely all along, and you were pretty vocal on Twitter today, particularly mentioning Justice Sotomayor's line of questioning, even one comparing brain-dead individuals to babies in the womb and whether or not they can feel pain. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Sure. I was struck by, just to be blunt, how poorly constructed Justice Sotomayor's questions were. They just weren't that thoughtful. It was the type of thing that you expect from a freshman, late night, a philosophy BS session. But I think that's a sign of how weak the argument is for the pro-choice side on this. They can't ground it in the Constitution. They can't ground it in good science. They can't ground it in good philosophy. At one point, she asserted that it's only religion that could lead someone to be pro-life. If that's true, that's a really bad sign for secularism. But my viewpoint on this is that it's no more religious nor any less religious than the argument for why we shouldn't allow homicide for adults or for born children. It's the same exact argument that grounds our dignity, our innate value, our worth, whether we're in the womb or outside of the womb. And if that's only defensible on religion, so much the worse for secularists.
Yeah, and another thing I want to mention, too, because you were, on Twitter a lot today, we noticed you also talked about that you were talking to a former Supreme Court clerk who said the pro-abortion arguments were not well received by the justices. Let's touch on that, if you will.
Sure. I think that we only really heard a lot from two of the left-leaning justices, Justice Breyer and Justice Sotomayor. Justice Kagan was tellingly quiet, which either suggests that she knows that her side is going to be losing this case, or she's going to be trying to lobby the conservative justices, one-on-one, privately, between now and when they conference on Friday. It's important for court watchers to remember that this case won't be formally announced until probably the end of June. They're going to vote on it at the end of this week. Then they're going to start writing their opinions, circulating opinions. And we know from past cases that justices change their votes. They switch sides. It'll be important for us to make clear that nothing short of overturning Roe and overturning Casey is an acceptable outcome in this case.
Yeah, and Ryan, there was something that we heard a lot today. Maybe people weren't familiar with the stare decisis, or the court following its previous rulings, which seemed to be a cornerstone kind of the debate today. Can you talk to us about why that precedent is so important to the court, and why overturning a case of this magnitude could be so significant?
Sure. I mean, stare decisis is an important judicial principle that we don't want the court, year to year, constantly changing what it says the law is, that we want consistency and predictability when it comes to the law. But when the court gets a decision egregiously wrong, it's up to the court to admit it and to correct the record, that our fidelity should be first and foremost to the Constitution, not to a past court ruling, especially when it's wrong, about a matter of such important justice and human rights as the right to life. Justice Alito was brilliant on this, and he kept saying, all right, so Plessy v. Ferguson, the case that said that racial segregation was constitutionally acceptable, should the court not have overturned that decision? How long did it have to wait before it admitted a mistake and overturned that decision? Now, if you think racial discrimination was unconstitutional, you think racial discrimination is unjust, and I think both of those things, it's unjust, it's unconstitutional, the court should have gotten it right as soon as possible. It's even worse with abortion. Yeah. Right? Abortion is unjust, and it shouldn't. We shouldn't have waited this long. Now's the time for the court to finally get it right.
Yeah, right. Not a whole lot of time left, but quickly, your thoughts. How do you think this is going to shape up? And then also, if ultimately Roe versus Wade is overturned, what would happen? What would happen for the state's responsibility in regulating abortions?
So, I mean, a lot could change between now and when they finally announce a decision. But I think just going by today's oral arguments, I think we're in a good spot for a 6-3 ruling overturning Roe and overturning Casey. And it's going to be important for us to make clear that that's the only acceptable outcome here. What that would mean is that it would then return the abortion question to the democratic process. That means in all 50 states, citizens are going to have to be engaged to ensure that their elected representatives pass good laws protecting children, but so too at the federal level. Both Congress and the executive branch, the president, can enact policies that will protect children. And then the last thing I'll say is all of us need to create a culture in which both children and mothers are going to be welcomed, are going to be supported. We can pass laws that will allow more women to choose life, to have paid family leave, to have economic policies that make family formation and the choice to bear a child and to raise a child more feasible. I think if Roe is finally overturned, that's not the end of the pro-life movement. That's the beginning of a new stage for the pro-life movement.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time. So much more we can talk about, but unfortunately running out of time. We always appreciate your expertise. Thank you again.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court arguments also impressed Erin Hawley, senior counsel for the Alliance Defending Freedom. She told me why pro-lifers should be encouraged by the news.
Absolutely. Well, I thought the argument in Dobbs could not have gone better. Mississippi's Attorney General and Solicitor General who argued did a fabulous job. And as we listened to the questions from the justices, I think court watchers were especially watching for Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Barrett as the new justices on the court, and also the Chief Justice. And both Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Barrett asked really tough questions of the other side. They indicated that they found it problematic that the court was involved in these sort of decisions when the Constitution is neutral. Justice Kavanaugh in particular was concerned that the court was getting into an area where the Constitution said nothing. So I think the argument went really well.
And Erin, for you, anything that really struck out yesterday?
Again, I think to go back to Justice Kavanaugh, his questions were really piercing. He rebutted the assumption that the court should never overrule precedent. He listed a litany of cases, important cases, in which the Supreme Court has overruled prior precedent, including Brown versus Board, which many of us consider to be probably the greatest decision the Supreme Court ever issued. And so Justice Kavanaugh made the salient point that the Supreme Court does, in fact, overrule decisions. decisions. And sometimes those decisions that overrule prior cases become the most important that the court issues. So he made clear that he was not afraid to overrule cases, that he thought that is proper for the court to do. I also really loved the Chief Justice. He had some great questions pointing out that the viability line is totally unprincipled. It's unmoored from anything in the Constitution. And he noted that the United States laws on abortion are so permissive that it puts us in the same category as the People's Republic of China. Probably not a category we want to be in on a lot of issues, and certainly not abortion policy.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things the pro-abortion attorneys argued that the 14th Amendment's due process clause, that is, grants women the liberty to have abortions. Can you talk to us more about that? And how does the liberty argument differ from other pro-abortion arguments, such as, the right to privacy?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And as you think about sort of the evolution of this abortion doctrine at the Supreme Court, it really illustrates just how made up the doctrine is. If you look at Roe, Roe famously, or I should say infamously, relied on the emanations and penumbras, as the court, they were quoting a case saying this, that comes out of the other Bill of Rights, which means they didn't find anything in the text of the Constitution itself. They sort of cobbled other interests together. Which is completely unprincipled as a constitutional matter, was widely derided even by liberal constitutional law scholars as not even constitutional law, nor even attempting to be. So the sort of attempt to resuscitate this doctrine has been to place the right to abortion in the Liberty Clause. And at least there is a textual hook. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution does protect liberty. But at the end of the day, this argument fares no better. And that's for the simple reason that in order for liberty interests to be protected under the 14th Amendment, the Supreme Court requires that right be deeply rooted in our nation's traditions and history. And if you look at the right to abortion in the 1868s, there absolutely was no right to abortion. In fact, most of the states limited, restricted, and forbid abortion. So there's just no way you can cobble together this idea that at the time of the 14th Amendment, there was a right to abortion. In fact, the opposite is true. And so the liberty argument fails as well.
Erin, we have probably about a minute left or so, but wondering, ultimately, how do you think this is going to shape up? And also, what other cases do you have your eye on?
Absolutely. Well, this is, I think, a really encouraging oral argument. I think Mississippi is bold in asking the court to overrule Roe versus Wade and follow on cases like Casey. I think that's the most principled way for the court to decide the case. It would remove the court from an issue that constitutionally belongs to the people and return that matter to the states, which I think is the right thing to do, and also the sort of easiest decision to write because it's constitutionally accurate. The court could take a middle ground and uphold Mississippi's law. They'd have to distort their current doctrine to do that, but that too would be a step forward. So either of those would be a win, but I'm hoping for the big result here and returning the issue entirely to the states.
As you can tell, pro-life supporters are waiting anxiously for next summer's Supreme Court decision, hoping it will change the future of Roe versus Wade. Correspondent Mark Irons brings us the story of one woman who will not stop fighting for life until it's fully protected.
A decision by the nation's highest court could lead to the end of Roe versus Wade. Pro-lifers rallied outside the Supreme Court last week to make their voices heard. Sarah St Onge tells me why she came down from New York.
Because it's still legal to kill babies in the United States, and I will not stop until this is done.
She's also driven by her own personal story. In 1994, Sarah was a single 19-year-old mother, and then she found out she was pregnant again. Sarah thought she needed to focus her attention on providing a good life for her one son, and another baby might take away from that. She had an abortion.
I believed the lie. Well, this was going to be simple, it was going to be easy, and I was going to do this and move on, and my life was going to be better because of it.
Sarah quickly regretted her decision.
I lost all of my self-confidence in terms of parenting. It just was gone.
Sarah would slowly evolve from being a woman who had an abortion to becoming a fighter for life. She got married, her family grew, and one experience helped activate her advocacy for the unborn. In 2010, Sarah was pregnant with a daughter. Doctors discovered her baby had a lethal birth defect, and she was told by healthcare providers
that I should terminate the pregnancy. You understand this baby's going to die. You understand that, right?
But for Sarah, taking the life of her daughter was out of the question.
She was a human being, and she was alive at that time, and I don't kill people because they are disabled or their life is going to be short. You know, it's just morally reprehensible to even think of doing so.
Beatrix Elizabeth was born and lived for 1 hour and 47 minutes.
We got to hold her and love her.
And since then, the work of Sarah St Onge continues. She writes and speaks about her experiences and shares compassion with women who have had abortions.
But the healing only comes when you acknowledge that there's something that happened that was wrong, and there's a person that's missing.
In Washington, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, pro-lifers celebrate a new Texas law, how the White House is responding. And Born Alive bill. Lawmakers on Capitol Hill discuss the need to protect abortion survivors. Welcome back to our EWTN News Nightly Pro-Life Special. I'm Tracy Sable. The Supreme Court rebuked initial attempts to block a Prolife Texas law. It protects unborn children by banning abortions after the child's heartbeat can be detected. Pro-lifers celebrate the news. However, the Biden administration is not. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports.
President Joe Biden, described as a devout Catholic by his press secretary, released a blistering statement today saying the Supreme Court's ruling overnight is an unprecedented assault on a woman's constitutional rights under Roe v. Wade. The president writes, complete strangers will now be empowered to inject themselves in the most private and personal health decisions faced by women. This law is so extreme, it does not even allow for exceptions in the case of rape or incest. Adding, his administration is now looking specifically to the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Justice to see what steps the federal government can take to ensure that women in Texas have access to safe and legal abortions. The Supreme Court did not rule on the constitutionality of the Texas law, but did say the current challenge did not meet the high burden needed to block it. More legal challenges are likely. The White House made it clear where they stand.
Why does the president support abortion when his own Catholic faith teaches abortion is morally wrong?
He believes that it's a woman's right, it's a woman's body, and it's her choice.
Who does he believe then should look out for the unborn child?
He believes that it's up to a woman to make those decisions, and up to a woman to make those decisions with her doctor.
But pro-lifers applaud the Texas law.
Yeah, we're just so excited here in Texas for this law, that it's being upheld, that it went into effect. I think it's just been so surreal to know that literally hundreds of lives were saved yesterday and will be today.
Sarah Czar from Students for Life has been rallying pro-life supporters in Texas.
I think Roe v. Wade is about to be obsolete, and the federal, Texans want this. Texas is pro-life, and the people have spoken.
Now, back in that White House press briefing room, the press secretary, Jen Psaki, challenged me. She said that since I've never been pregnant, I don't understand the tough choices that women have to make. And she's right. I have never been pregnant, but I can tell you that millions of women are pro-life and want to defend unborn children right from the moment of conception. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Pro-life Republican lawmakers tried to force the House to vote on a Born Alive bill requiring medical care for babies who survive an abortion. They would only need a handful of Democrats to support the measure to get it to pass. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales reports.
All 212 House Republicans and a few at-large members have signed a discharge petition for the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act. That means if it gets a few more signatures, 218 is what it needs, then it can bypass the committees and go to the House floor for a vote.
That is the bill that Nancy Pelosi has blocked 76 times. It has the doctor provide life-saving care to the child who survives an abortion attempt. And then on top of that, it requires that all medical professionals in the room report the incident.
Pro-life Republican Congresswoman Kat Kamak authored the discharge petition. She and others like Minority Whip Steve Scalise hope a few Democrats will jump on board.
Every Republican has signed on We're trying to get just 4 Democrats. There's more than that who have said that they're pro-life, but you cannot say you're pro-life and not sign this discharge petition.
The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act would build on legislation passed by Congress in 2002 when the Born Alive Infants Protection Act passed. That legislation clarified any baby who is born alive at any stage of development is a person under federal law. The current bill, authored by Representative Ann Wagner, would further clarify that any baby born alive as a result of an attempted abortion must be given reasonable care and transported immediately to a hospital. Congresswoman Wagner says she's committed to getting the Born Alive Survivors Protection Act to the finish line.
As a cradle Catholic and as someone who believes very deeply, this is a duty that I have and one that I'm going to see through. I am going to make sure that the Born Alive bill is not just passed, but is signed into law.
I will continue to follow this bill and others when any new information becomes available. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, 40 Days for Life. See the annual push to support mothers and pray for the unborn. Welcome back to our EWTN News Nightly Pro-Life Special. I'm Tracy Sable. U.S. Catholic bishops declared October Respect Life Month. At the same time, pro-life supporters joined together outside of abortion clinics for 40 Days for Life. Correspondent Mark Irons shows us how they prayed to end abortion and why the mission is so personal for some of them.
So us being out here is especially important because everything we offer is better than having to go inside.
The mission is to pray that women won't walk through these doors to have an abortion.
I'm a mother from a crisis pregnancy.
Catherine Hunter leads this group of sidewalk counselors. Hoping to change hearts and minds, they try to engage with the people going in and out of the Metropolitan Family Planning Clinic, an abortion facility in College Park, Maryland. Years ago, Hunter had 2 abortions. She attributes it to what she calls being on the Russian roulette of birth control.
You know, this is a very violent sort of cycle, to be on birth control, to have an abortion, to be on birth control again, and to have an abortion.
But now she advocates for life, and these prayer warriors are joined by others around the world for a 40-day vigil, praying outside abortion clinics like Planned Parenthood.
Right now, we're in the midst of the largest 40 Days for Life campaign ever.
Sean Carney is the founder of 40 Days for Life, an internationally coordinated effort aiming to end abortion through prayer. This year, he says more than 600 cities are taking part.
We can't sit by. You know, abortion has a sense of urgency that very few other issues have. It goes on today. There are 2,500 abortions every single day in America.
And Carney mentioned the Metropolitan Family Planning Clinic in College Park as being particularly brutal in the number of innocent lives it takes.
These pro-life advocates are praying outside this abortion facility. We just saw one woman walk in, but then she came out.
Bonnie Burrell, a sidewalk counselor, had a chance to speak with her.
I asked her if she had changed her mind, and she said yes.
It's a big victory for this small group.
We believe it is our work as caring, compassionate Christians and Catholics to come out here to offer one last petition of love and mercy.
And Catherine Hunter, now a mother, told us about giving birth and raising her son, Gabriel, after a crisis pregnancy.
It's been very healing to choose life and to have that baby love you out of that situation.
In College Park, Maryland, Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
We're also looking forward to the March for Life in Washington, D.C. It's coming up on Friday, January 21st. This year's theme is Equality Begins in the Womb. EWTN is planning comprehensive coverage. And we thank you for watching our Pro-Life special. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.